All right, third graders, today we are going to be painting our clay fish. We just spent a little time looking at the smartboard at the color wheel. So you are experts at knowing that colors next to each other are going to mix really well for this project. My examples show yellow mixing with orange, and they're right next to each other on the color wheel, so they blended really well. I even went all the way into red. The other example, I used colors on the other side of the color wheel. So I started with green, and when I mixed it with yellow, I got that nice yellow-green right there, and then I went all the way to yellow at the tail. You can use other colors on your fish. They just aren't going to mix very well if they're not next to each other on the color wheel. Painting your fish today. Let's see, I'm going to try a different color scheme. I'm going to go with a little bit of red on this one. So I like to start with my big brush. I scoop up quite a bit of paint, and when I bring it to my clay, I'm going to have to do a couple of brush tricks. Going back and forth today is not going to get all of those spots. I might need to move my brush in circles. I might need to stamp it like I'm stamping something. Having a lot of paint on your brush is really going to help you get those textures as well. So back and forth, swirl, and stamp. While my paint is wet, I am going to do some mixing. So I don't have all those spots perfect, but I'm going to switch colors. When I switch colors, I am making sure my brush gets really clean, rubbing it at the bottom of the cup. You can choose to squeeze out that extra water. If rubbing on the bottom of that cup is not getting it clean enough, I also like to use a paper towel, and that helps get the water out. Also helps to kind of get all that extra paint out. So the next color I was going to choose was purple, because red and purple are so close to each other on the color wheel. We know that they are going to mix really well. So they're mixing well because they're wet. They're mixing well because they're next to each other on the color wheel. Sorry you didn't see any of that. So I am making right now this like red violet that's between red and purple on the color wheel. So those look awesome together. They're mixing well. I'm making sure I'm getting all those textured spots by stamping, swirling. I might continue to mix so that the tail gets just purple. So I'd go from red to red violet to purple. This does dry super fast, and you're allowed to put other colors on top. I think that black might look really good on this in those little textured spots I made, or maybe even to outline the lines of the fins. It's looking pretty cool. So your goal is to make this fish look as real as possible, and that includes getting inside that mouth, which is a little tricky. So I'm going to use some red or pink, peach maybe, and when I try to get in the mouth, I'm actually holding my paintbrush at the very, very tip, and I am trying to like dab in there, rub the sides, get it as good as I can. I have quite a bit of paint on my brush, and I am just brushing, circling, still stamping. I also want to look at the side of the fish on that mouth. So spend a lot of time getting this as good as you can. You don't want to see all those little clay-colored spots through it. Take your time. A finished project will have the entire side covered, the top edge in between those zigzags or whatever you have, behind the fins, the eyes, the mouth. The bottom is a choice. You do not have to paint this unless you'd like. When you have painted this as best as you can, you need to put it in the spot that Mrs. Cleary has pointed out. You will need to return dirty brushes to Mrs. Cleary's table. She'll have a cup to soak them in. You will need to wash your messy mat. So use those messy mats. They just help to keep the tables a little bit neater. If everyone at your table is finished with the paint in the water cups, you can bring them over to the sink by the window. Mrs. Cleary will get those things put away for you. After that, you can read, write, or create.